but Ole Miss did get 2 practices in this week before they send the players off. What do you want to learn? Is there anything that you're looking to learn about Ole Miss as they go through spring practice and into the spring game, which, they're going to do it like they did last year, so it's going to be tough to read. However, is there anything that you think that we can learn or that you're looking to learn during spring practice?
That's a good question. The first thing that strikes me is with Judkins gone, who steps up to become that back? Can Bentley do that? Or do they have to look at, at somebody else in that backfield? Because we say it all the time, like one of the biggest misnomers in college football is that Ole Miss is this explosive passing offense. They are an explosive passing offense. They get explosive plays, but that at its heart is a run-first offense. They lead the conference in rushing almost every year, and Judkins has been a big piece of that the past 2 years. So obviously that. And then I want to see how that defensive line looks, because that's where the real work was done in the transfer portal, was to get some studs there on that defensive line. And Pete Golding, is a guy who knows how to coach star defensive linemen. He did it all those years at Alabama. So what does that group look like? Because that group, to me, is the difference for Ole Miss from being a 9-3 Citrus Bowl team and being a 10-2, 11-1 college football playoff team.
Yeah, they need to have Umanmielen and Walter Nolan be as advertised, because, I keep going back to what Lane Kiffin said after the Georgia game, and he was careful with his words because he didn't want to insult his players, but essentially he was asked, how did this happen? What do you have to do to ensure this doesn't happen? And he was like, got to get better players. And it's just true. Georgia was so much better than Ole Miss on the lines of scrimmage. And that's the thing to watch this spring. We will only get one look at Ole Miss this spring. That no open scrimmages or anything like that, which I think is unfortunate. But the only look we'll get of them is for the spring game. But if they are going to close that gap and be a team that competes for a championship like they think that they are building towards, or at least being a playoff team, they need to be better there. And so Nolan and Umanmielen need to be those guys on the defensive line. And the 4 transfers need to be what they were at their previous stops. You need both Washington guys to be exactly what they were at Washington. You need Pounds at left tackle to be what he was, one of the best pass blocking tackles in all of college football a year ago. He needs to be that guy. They need Micah Pettis to come back healthy from injury. If they are what they were on the lines of scrimmage a year ago, they still have a chance to win 10 games. They've got weapons and stuff like that, but they have a ceiling that is lower than people want it to be if they are not pretty dramatically improved on the lines of scrimmage. So that was a perfect answer from you. That's what we need to know about this team is, did they actually improve on the lines of scrimmage? Is the on-paper improvement going to be tangible, in reality, in-game improvement?
And if it is, then Ole Miss is going to be where they want to be at the end of this season. They will be in the college football playoff. They will be playing for a national title. If it's not, they're still talented enough to win most of their games and have what in most years I would say would be a really great season at Ole Miss. 9-3 at Ole Miss to go to the Citrus Bowl, something like that, that's a fantastic season most years at Ole Miss. But with the investment that they've obviously made in NIL from the Grove Collective, with all the momentum that they have and with what they bring back in the expectation level, if they go 9-3 and miss the playoff, that is going to be a disappointing season. And it's when you think about Ole Miss and Mississippi State the same way, to say something like that is crazy. You think about just 5 short years ago. Think about when I first started on this show in 2018, which would have been Matt Luke's second to last year. And I could tell you that 5 years later, Ole Miss might go 9-3 and their fans would be miserably disappointed. It just shows you how far that they've come and how much that team has changed over the last 5 years.
And I did find Keith Carter's answer funny because he was diplomatic for a little bit when Richard asked him about expectations, playoff or bust, and Keith started the politics like, no, yeah, you know what? Yes, you're right. That's what they've been building towards. That's what needs to happen this year.
It is 100% playoff or bust for Ole Miss this year. If they go 9-3 and they go to the Citrus Bowl, their fans will be upset.
Yeah.
And again,
they should be.
4 years ago, they would have been like, this is the greatest thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
A 9-3 Citrus Bowl season would have been one of the top 5-6 seasons in Ole Miss history.
Yeah.
And now it'll be known as a disappointment. The good news for Ole Miss fans, if you're listening, is I don't think you're going to have to worry about it. I think you're going to be a playoff team because I think that defensive line, I mean, Walter Nolan is a difference maker. I don't know that he's as talented as Jeff Simmons, but that's the kind of player the stats aren't there because he's the guy taking up 2 and 3 blockers.
Yeah.
And everybody else gets the stats around him. So I don't know who Ole Miss's Montez Sweat would be in that.
Who made me, Ellen?
And then that's who you have to keep an eye on.
And then we talked about this earlier in the week, but since spring practice did start, and a side thing, less impactful for 2024, but you're going to see in the spring game the first look at the quarterbacks of the future, Simmons versus Howard. Dart appears to be ahead of schedule. Because I was told a few weeks ago that you're not going to see him really at all in spring practice. He is practicing on a limited basis. He's not going to do anything, live action or anything like that. But he actually is practicing, which is a good sign for his recovery. But you're going to get a really good long look of Walker Howard and Austin Simmons and what those guys look like. Simmons in the middle of a baseball season as well, where his role is going to keep increasing because he looks like a viable bullpen option for this team. But we're going to get to see that, and that is compelling and interesting. Quarterback position's always something extra. Like for Mississippi State, when we start talking about their spring, when that starts here in a week and a half, I guess, all eyes will be on Blake Shapen. All eyes are going to be on Simmons and Howard in the spring game.
And a different situation because with Shapen, it's trying to find out if he's going to be the starter versus with Simmons and Howard, it's who's going to be number 2. The interesting thing is going to be with this is, let's say you come out of that spring and, Dart's 1, but let's just say Simmons is the clear number 2. Like it's obvious. That's the guy who's the number. What happens with Howard? Does he stick around?
It's a good question.
Does he head, because that's a guy who I know wants to play. It's why he left LSU. He thought that he was going to be able to maybe sit a year behind Dart and then become the starting quarterback at Ole Miss and have that opportunity. If he's third on the depth chart coming out of the spring, does he hang around? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. It's a really interesting question. And there's no way that Kiffin's going to tip his hand to try to keep them around as long as possible, but sometimes the obvious is the obvious, and you just can't ignore it. So we will have to see. Spring practice started in Oxford this week. Again, we will do a similar exercise for State when they begin.